at home, quality time, hopefully making the most of it. Hope you had a good Father's Day. Reminds me of a good old joke. It's more of a Mother's Day joke or a Valentine's Day joke, whatever it is. This lady turns to her husband and says, I had a dream last night, and I dreamed that you were going to get me this magnificent rock on top of a ring, and she's describing the most beautiful, magnificent ring out there with diamonds. And he says, wow, that's a wonderful dream. I guess we'll find out today what the meaning of that dream is. And so he comes home later that evening with a nicely wrapped box, and looks great. It's wonderful. And she's very excited about this. Wow, maybe the dream has come true. And she opens the box, and in it there's a book, How to Interpret Dreams. And this man's funeral was held yesterday at West Park Cemetery at 2 p.m. Just joking. But today we're going to talk a little bit about dreams. And have you ever wondered what the Torah's perspective is about dreams? So today, hopefully, we'll take a few moments and we can discuss that very idea to try to understand what is the Jewish perspective, what is the Torah's perspective on dreams. What I hope to do is to explore some of those aspects, the human capacity for prophecy, and look at some scenarios where a dream or a thought even can make a world of a difference. So hang on tight. We're actually looking at this week's Parsha. I forgot to bring my Chumash here, so we'll have to just look. I'll use my phone as the Chumash for context and just tell you any particular verses I'm looking at. Please, this is back to school, but this time it's cool. So don't hesitate if you want to drink your coffee, you want to eat some food, you have anything else you need to do. Gesundheit, do what you need to do with pleasure. There's no particular rules. Of course, you can unmute yourself at any time if you have any questions or thoughts you want to interject with. And I like when we get a little bit engaged, so please don't hesitate. Feel free to unmute yourself and share your thoughts or ask your questions, whatever you wish to. So here are the things. If you've ever had dreams, and sometimes we have wonderful, pleasant, good dreams, and sometimes we have nightmares. If you ever jolted awake, like the terror of a nightmare, right? Your heart's still pounding. You're so glad it wasn't real. Or perhaps the opposite. You have that really warm, fuzzy feeling. A dream is going so nicely. And when you wake up, you wish it was real. What happened there? It fooled you, right? But the question I wonder is maybe they are real. Maybe our dreams are these, portents of things to come. Maybe we should worry. In my life, I could tell you, I've had some premonitions that have come true. Good ones and not good ones. And I personally I personally have a feeling, that dreams certainly make a difference. There's something about it. Now, I know there's a cynic within me that says, dreams are just the nocturnal flashings of the effervescent human mind. That's a dream. They're nothing but our own thoughts. They're meaningless, harmless, just whatever you thought about during the day, perhaps. But there was a book. In fact, Sigmund Freud talked about this, and he talks the interpretation of dreams. So certainly there is meaning attributed to dreams from psychology, from other perspectives. It's not just bluff. There's something to it. And obviously we want to explore the Torah's perspective. What does the Torah have to say about dreams? Sorry that I'm multitasking a little bit here, just responding to some people asking for the code to get in today's shir. But that's where we're going to go today. And hopefully if we could explore it properly, I think we'll cover some interesting, fascinating ideas that you might find interesting. people certainly, since Sigmund Freud talked about this, have come to realize that to every dream there's a deeper meaning, no doubt. Even, sorry, go ahead, Sarah. Careful. Apologies, the kids are off school and this is what's going on. There's homeschooling. I'm not in the office right now, so you have to bear with me as I'm multitasking between kids and messages and all these things going on. So even if a dream is not some kind of a prophecy, but they are our mind, they are our subconscious at work, and there's something to it. We have to understand, and let's look at the Torah, because why do you think I chose this topic today? Because it's in this week's Parsha. And certainly from a Torah perspective, Judaism and our world look at dreams, we certainly take it seriously. I see, some of you here, we spent Yom Tov together, whether you're shul members or you were at the Pesach retreat. And on Yom Tov, there is a prayer that we say during the B'duchening, during the Birchas Kanim, the priestly blessing. In Israel, that we discussed this a few weeks ago, but the priestly blessing in Israel is done more regularly than we do it here in diaspora. But here we do it on Yom Tov. And while the priests are blessing the community, there's a very interesting prayer we say. So you know how it goes, and there's different tunes, depending, always Yom Tov, especially at the Pesach retreat, and please God, we'll be doing more of these retreats, try to have a nice mix of nusach. I'm accommodating. I come from Chabad and enjoy the Chabad tunes, but others are from Ashkenaz. If you're coming from from Yeshiva College, where you have ay 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 ay, or in Chabad we have a beautiful melody for the blessing of the Kohanim. Ay 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 ay. Yivarechicha Hadoi Shem So, and the tune continues. I don't know if anybody really wants to hear this voice singing it here now, but between the stanzas, there is a prayer that we say. And that prayer is a prayer about dreams. And that's very interesting. I'm just going to open my siddur quickly to find it. And the words go like this. Ribono shel olam, Master of the world. Ani shalach v'chalamoisai shalach. I am yours and my dreams are yours. Remember, this is between chanting the phrases of the priestly blessing, we are saying a prayer to God. So the priests are blessing us, the Kohanim are sharing the Birchas Kohanim, and while they're doing so, we are saying this prayer. And the prayer continues. Chaloim chalamti ve'enei yodea mahu. I have dreamed a dream, but I don't know what it was. Yehi ratzon l'fanecha Hashem, Elokai v'Elokei Avosai, may it be your will, Hashem, the God and God of my ancestors. Sheyu kol chalamaisai alai v'al kol Yisrael l'tov. All the dreams concerning myself and concerning all of our people should be for good. Bein shechalamti al atzmi, whether it was a dream that I dreamt about myself, uvein shechalamti al acherim, or whether it was a dream that I dreamt about others. Ubein shechalmu acherim alai, or whether it was a dream that others dreamt about me. Im tovim hem, we say to God, if they are good, chazkeim v'amtzeim, that you should strengthen them and force them, the yiskaimu bibehem kechalei meisav sheyesav atzadik, and they should come to fruition. They should be fulfilled like the dreams of Yosef atzadik. Remember the dreams of Joseph. Joseph was a dreamer. But they say some people dream. I just have to share with you that word my father once told me. Joseph, not only was he a dreamer, and indeed his dreams came true, and he became the viceroy of Egypt and became the master of his brothers, the one who provided them for all of their needs during the time of famine in Israel. But he also was the master interpreter of dreams. And it's one of my favorite little biblical stories. In general, if you ask me who is my favorite biblical Torah personality, it's no doubt Joseph. Yosef HaTzadik, there's so much about him that just resonates with me. The idea of how he goes through all his struggles and challenges and difficulties. He's a dreamer and he makes things happen. But in one of the dreams he interprets, besides for this led him to interpreting Pharaoh's dream. And to me, that story actually stands out, and it's worthwhile always to repeat the message and lesson. That Joseph is there lingering in an Egyptian dungeon, in a jail. He's incarcerated for a false accusation alleged by the wife of Potiphar that he tried to violate her. We know the story in the Torah. There he's sitting in the jail, and he's joined by two ministers of Pharaoh's cabinet, the butler and the baker, the chief butler and baker. And yet, instead of minding his own business and sullying, being all upset about his own difficulties, what does Joseph do? And this reminds me of people right now who are suffering with COVID-19, and yet their care and concern is about others. Picking up the phone, caring, calling, looking after others. It's quite profound. That's what Joseph does. Joseph turns to his fellow inmates and says, Madua panechem ra'im. He asks them, why are your faces downtrodden today? Right? Why do you look so morose, melancholy, lugubrious, sad, depressed? And they each tell them their predicaments. They tell Yosef about their story, about how they were each accused of their crime in Pharaoh's palace and their jobs. And they each tell Joseph their dream. The butler has a dream that there's 3 clusters of grapes, and he squeezes the grapes into Pharaoh's goblet. What does it mean, he asks. And Joseph interprets the 3 clusters of grapes are representative of 3 days to come. In 3 days' time, you, Joseph, will be restored. You, the butler, he says, will be restored to your position as Pharaoh's chief butler. And the baker, I also have a similar dream. He says, in my dream, I saw 3 baskets of bread on my head, and birds were chirping and eating off the bread. What does my dream mean? And Joseph again interprets his dream and says, your dream means in 3 days' time, 3 baskets, 3 days, you will be hanged and birds will be chirping off of your head. And all of a sudden, the baker is wondering, why is my dream so different? The butler dreams of 3 clusters of grapes. He squeezes the grapes and he is reinstated to his position. He gets to remain alive. And I, the baker, such a similar dream, 3 baskets of bread on my head, yet I am destined to death. What's the meaning? There's various commentaries, but one of my favorites, which my father shared with me, and will always stand out as a profound lesson to me in life, is that in the butler's dream, there was action. The butler doesn't just dream of being reinstated into his position. In his dream, he is seeing action. He's squeezing those grapes. He's doing something. Some people dream of success. Other people wake up and make it happen. Martin Luther King dreamed. He said, I have a dream. That dream is materializing. It's coming to fruition. People were being discriminated on against in the USA. And Martin Luther King's dream was of cohesion, of peace, of an end to all of this discrimination. It's happening slowly but surely. And this is the prayer we say to God. If it's a good dream, God, then please make it happen, make it materialize. It should be real. And if it's not a good dream, right, then please heal me like you healed Chizkiah, the king of Judah, from his sickness, or the prophetess Miriam from her leprosy, and Naaman from his leprosy. We mentioned different instances of where different people were healed from the negative dreams. And then we mentioned this week's parsha in this prayer. What does the prayer conclude with? Ukeshem shahafachta es klalas I don't have my sitter here, so I'm trying to remember it. Bilam Arasha Miklala Livracha, just as you transform the curse of Bilam in our parsha this week from a curse to a blessing, so should you transform all negative dreams or thoughts about me and our people, that they should all be for good. And we conclude the prayer with Sishmereni, Schaneni, V'Sirtzeni. Hashem, please, you should shield me, you should be merciful to me, and you should desire me. So think about this. Here in the Birchas Kohanim, in the priestly blessing, which only happens a few times a year here in diaspora. Anyone who, if you've been present at any such bracha, you know that this is like the highlight. I always see in shul that people perhaps aren't in shul during the rest of the service, they come in for the priestly blessing. The kids' service, everybody comes over to the shul for the priestly blessing. It's a heightened time of emotional sensitivity. It's a special time that we connect, we speak to God about our most urgent needs. And what are we talking about during this Birchas Kohanim? This is an opportunity to talk about our dreams, right? Are the dreams really that important? What is it? Why is it that we choose to take this moment to talk about our dreams? And the truth is, there's a large selection of Jewish sources, of literature, of texts, of Talmud, of so much that says, yes, indeed, dreams are very important. That's why we have a prayer dedicated to it. Dreams are a subtle form of prophecy. It's a subliminal message about our future. So we are meant to take our dreams seriously. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. The thing is that there are some conflicting messages in Jewish literature about it. Because the Gemara tells us that it seems in one place it says not to take dreams so seriously, in another place it says, a dream is a 60th of prophecy. Now we know we've been discussing in previous weeks about the laws of nullification, right? A 60th is considered a taste of something. That's why in order for something non-kosher falling into a kosher and getting mixed in, there has to be more than 60 times that amount. Batal b'shish. So a 60th or less is considered this idea that there's a taste of it that's actually there. And the Talmud tells us that dreams are a form of a prophecy. So there is some element of truth, some aspect about dreams. And what we're going to be discussing today is the Torah's perspective about dreams, what we can learn from them, what difference dreams make to us, right? Is it just a, sorry, I think I did not, somebody tried to get in the group now. And by mistake, I think I booted them. Hey, sorry, I apologize. You know, I multitask here. Okay, there we go. Back. Okay. You know, if you're watching on Zoom or on Facebook, on YouTube, then you obviously don't have this issue. Just a second, ladies and gents. I don't take phone calls from anybody, but it's the Rav. Yes, Rav.
What time are we meeting? What time are you into the office?
Late. I have to go to the hospital to visit somebody who's not well. I have to go to the family who's one of the seniors who passed away, Philip Gishin. So I'm going to be a while. Maybe like 2 o'clock.
So maybe I'll meet you inside.
I'm leaving Santa. I'm going after my share now to Rosebank Clinic to see somebody who's very sick.
2 o'clock. I'll meet you.
Oh, okay, fine, no problem. All right.
We'll speak later.
Okay, Zach is on time. Sorry, guys. Okay. I guess if you start paying my salary, I'll also start taking your calls in the middle of this year. And I'm just joking. Is someone going to edit this out of my classes afterwards? So the Torah itself, which obviously today we want to discuss the Torah's perspective on dreams. What is the Torah's view? The Torah itself attests to the possibility that that dreams are this form of prophecy. It's not just what the Talmud tells us, but rather in this very Chumash Bamidbar that we're reading currently, we read about the story of, remember we read this a few weeks ago, Moshe, who was, you remember when Miriam and Aaron spoke negative about Moshe, right? And Hashem's response, the idea, let me just find the verse quickly. What does it say? Okay, so it's chapter 12, verse 6 and 7 and 8. What does it say? Hashem says, please listen to my words. If there are prophets among you, I, God, will make myself known to him in a vision. I will speak to him in a dream. Right? We have this with Korach as well. Hashem says that to Moshe, I speak directly, panim al panim, peh peh, mouth to mouth. But generally speaking, to prophets, it's in a dream. So yes, Moshe is coming out superior, so to say, that God speaks to him directly, not in a dream. But certainly we see that a dream is a valid form of prophecy. Right? We see in the writings of the prophets that dreams were sometimes used as a vehicle of divine communication. In the book of Shmuel, for example, it talks about this. And in numerous places, and not only now, it talks about in the future that dreams will be our way of seeing into the great unknown. Talks about the prophet Yoel discusses this. So there's many, it says that in the future, your sons and daughters shall prophesy. Your elders should dream dreams. Your young men should see visions. So it's telling us that dreams are a form of prophecy. So certainly from a Jewish perspective, traditionally, dreams are one of God's ways of delivering a message to us. So the question now becomes, why are dreams the ideal form of that kind of heavenly communication? Right? What is it about dreams? Why is it the ideal form of heavenly communication? Yeah, you have an answer for me? Well, I'll try with you. Let's see what we could uncover from a Torah perspective. Okay?
Rabbi,
and certainly, as we discussed before, there's an unconscious nature of dreams. The dreams that when we dream something, the more switched on that our emotional and intellectual senses are, the more we are in touch with the reality of that dream. Okay? The more a person withdraws from the hard realities of daily life, the more sensitive we grow when we become to the subtler, to the finer things going on around us. And in that sense, we could say that as we weaken our focus on our just worldly, boorish pleasures, then our minds, our brains sharpen. We increase their activity and sensitivity because we're not focused on just the material, physical, mundane, but rather we could connect to the spiritual. And if we could do exactly that, then we're more in tune with the messages that are coming our way. Think of an example, to the extreme degree, on the moments before a person's death. And it's then that a person is most sublime. A person slips out of the bonds of earth, right? Just 2 weeks ago, a lady called me and said, Rabbi, she told me this. I had enough to take her seriously. Lucky enough I did. She said the end is near. She was fully fine with it a few days before. Our volunteers saw her on Friday, and there she was on just a few days later, telling me that she feels the end is near. And she was right. Right? And even though I managed to go to the hospital to get in and talk to her and spend some time with her, I couldn't tell. I don't think I'm spiritually sensitive enough. But this woman, the things she told me, I guess she was slipping out of the bonds of earth. And to her, it was abundantly clear, right? The minds and her soul wasn't, I guess it wasn't bound by the earthly world. She had a certain clarity, a realization that most of us don't have. And that's why our patriarchs, leaders, and sages throughout our history, they blessed their children and their students just before they passed away. They used that as a time to impart the final words of wisdom. Not everyone is in tune with that. This particular woman, she certainly was. And in a sense, perhaps that's why we could say why dreams are like a divine inspiration. So, in fact, sleep, our sages tell us, is a 60th of death. Right? When we slip into unconsciousness at night, when we're retreating from the grind of our daily life here in this world, every single day, God gives us an opportunity to re-energize, to rejuvenate. What happens while we're sleeping? So in a sense, the Talmud says when we're sleeping, it's a moment, it's a time, it's a 60th of death, just like a dream is a 60th of prophecy. And there are numerous places in the Talmud where it talks about how when a person is sleeping, it's a moment, it's a 60th of death. It's like an experience. And in that sense, why dreams that happen during our sleep are in a sense, a form of prophecy. So certainly dreams from a traditional Jewish perspective are serious, right? And we understand, let me share with you another interesting thing from the Gemara. Let me just find this quickly. The Gemara tells us that, this is in Tractate Brachos, says the Gemara that there were 24 interpreters of dreams in Jerusalem. And Rabbi Bana said, once I had a dream and I went around to all of them, to all 24 of these dream interpreters, and they all gave different interpretations. And he says, all of them were fulfilled. So he said that confirms, the Gemara tells us, that all dreams follow the mouth of the interpreter. So basically, dreams mean whatever you want them to mean. Like, whatever my kids play, my kids just came in here collecting the Lego. Right? The kid can make whatever they want out of the Lego. You can make anything out of your dream. But then again, this rabbi doesn't seem to be supporting the idea that dreams are serious. He says they're not a prophecy. It's sort of that, what's the term for it? There's a name for it. I'm trying to recall if anyone could tell me what it's called. But basically, whatever you want to happen will happen. You could make it happen, right? You dreaming of something, you can make it happen. So, in fact, there's even an aspect of this in Jewish law, which tells us that it's another discussion in the Gemara, that if a person passed away, and now his children are inheriting his property, his estate, and they want to know, did he give the proper tithes that one is meant to give in their lifetime on the property, okay? Did the deceased person, did he pay his proper taxes, right? So it says that even if the father comes to this person in his dream, to the child in his dream, and says to his child that I tithed, and in fact, you could check in such and such a place the records of it. And in fact, you could go to that place and check the records. No, we say dreams have no legal bearing. We don't believe it, we don't accept it. If a dream tells us that money is not tithed, even if all the evidence shows that the dream is true. So the Gemara is telling us actually the opposite. We believe we believe that a person is righteous, right? And therefore we believe that a person who passed on did all the tithes necessary, paid all their taxes that were due, even if the child has a dream where the father came in the dream telling him that he didn't tithe, didn't read it properly, then we don't believe him. We don't accept it. It's not legally binding. Interesting. In our own experience, do we give thought? Do we pay attention to our dreams? Right? Now, generally speaking, I don't think so. Now, it's true that Pharaoh and Nebuchadnezzar, some famous people in history, they lost sleep trying to interpret their dreams. For the most part, we have dreams, we have nightmares, we have fantasies. We shrug it all off. But there are times when our dreams are serious. And that halacha discusses when you should take a dream seriously. Generally speaking, if a dream keeps recurring, you have the same dream over and over, then it's a matter that's serious and you have to take it serious. And we're told, to do something about it. There's even an idea of fasting when a dream is when you don't have a good dream, right? Now, why is it? What's happened? Why have times changed? Why don't we take our dreams as seriously as they did back then? And one possible explanation is that maybe times have changed, right? We have changed. Back in the day, humankind was more spiritually sensitive. And so they were graceful enough to use dream time as that interface with the spiritual world. Today, we're more, the Hebrew word is megusham. We're too engaged in the physicality of the world that we're not as sensitive to the meaning of our dreams. You see, sensitivity and sophistication are today not what it used to be. It used to be more spiritually sensitive. Today, it's more coarse and crude. So I think we possibly have lost the understanding, the meaning of what dreams are. But there's another, perhaps more compelling explanation for why we don't seem to take dreams so seriously today. And there are a number of neurological theories to dreams. Maybe as a webinar, we could bring a neurologist on here to explain. But the idea, basically, dreams are simply what we think about or what we want to think about or what we should think about, right? Dreams are the screenplay of our thoughts. They're not the prophetic herald that our forefathers, that our ancestors thought them to be. To them, it was more prophetic. And to us, it's more, again, I'm looking for that right word, what it is. But the point is that it's a projection or what we thought about. The Gemara tells us, that a person is only shown the thoughts of his heart. That generally speaking, our dreams today are what we thought about during the daytime. It's something that's on our minds. And in fact, the Gemara tells us a story about this. Rabbi. Says the Gemara, Amalei Kesel Rabbi Yeshua Rabbi Chanina. Caesar said to Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania, you say that you're very clever. Tell me, what will I see in my dream tonight? So Rabbi Yeshua told him, you'll see the Persians making you do forced labor, and they will make you feed disgusting animals with a golden staff. That was Rabbi Chanina's response. Rabbi Yeshua ben Chanina. And guess what the Gemara says? That whole night, Caesar thought about this image of the harsh labor they put him through, of the disgusting animals that he had to feed with his golden staff. He saw that in his dream. Now let me ask you, if I tell you right now, don't think about a pink elephant, what are you thinking about? I hope you're not thinking about a pink elephant, right? No pink elephants, true? That's usually the way it works today. We ourselves, we look at our dreams, we see, basically what we were thinking about during the day or what somebody told us, right? As crazy as things might turn out when they all clash together in our dreams, as oftentimes happens, we could usually figure out why we dreamed of what we did, right? So basically, in today's day and age, it appears that in modern and present times, basically we don't take our dreams that seriously, right? So now we asked before, why then do we have a prayer about dreams? Why do we say this prayer on Yom Tov about dreams? If it's nothing but our thoughts, right? Are we scared of our thoughts? So let's try to understand that. And for a moment, I want to just put our discussion about dreams aside and deal with another question altogether. Because if we look in this week's Parsha, we'll deal with another matter. And hopefully once we have figured the Parsha idea out, and we'll be able to better understand the contemporary approach to dreams. So first, quick recap, okay, of the Parsha. The Jewish people are marching. We're marching on confidently through the Sinai desert. We're on our way to the Promised Land, right? We're nearly there. And what's happening along the way? Look at last week's Parsha on Chukas. Bitter enemies attempt to thwart our progress to Israel, but they're cut down by Moshe. And we read the miraculous stories in last week's Parsha of how God prevented the enemies from attacking us. And we have quite a good reputation out there in the battlefield, right? Our fame precedes us, and we're able to continue on. We're nearly there. We're nearly at Israel. Now, the thing is, one of the nations, Moab, it was a kingdom that was at the southeast of Israel. Those who were at the Pesach retreat of 2017, where we had Margaret Rowitz, who gave us a tour of her walking the path, the journey that their ancestors took from Egypt to Israel, might recall what she showed us, the different lands and which was where. So there's the ancient kingdom of Moab. And their monarch, their king, his name was Balak. Balak was terrified by the approaching Jewish army who wanted to peacefully pass through his land. We sent messengers, please allow us to peacefully pass through. We're not doing anything. We'll only support you. We're coming, we'll buy food from you. We'll buy provisions, we'll buy gadgets. We are on our way to Israel, right? Now, Balak was afraid of the Jews, and he knew he couldn't defeat us militarily. So what does he do? He comes up with another plan. He hires Bilam. Bilam was also a prophet, a Gentile prophet, a sorcerer, who was at the top of his trade. And the plan was that Bilam would lie there and wait for the Jewish people. And then when he sees us, he would invoke all his curses until God would abandon us. And this way, Balak's plan was, if Bilam, who was, so to say, the Gentile counterpart to Moshe, could curse us out, then we had no chance of success. But we all know, read the Parsha, the plan didn't work. And what happened when Bilam tried to curse us? God intervened. And instead of curses, what happened? What happened? Flowery blessings, praise came from his mouth instead. As the verse says, Hashem did not want to listen to Bilam. God transformed those curses into blessings. Because God loves you. So there Bilam was in the mountaintop trying to curse the Jewish people. And instead, what happens? He lets out this volley of blessings instead of curses. The question is, where did Bilam get the power to try to curse the Jewish people? Where did it come from? Did he have some magical force? Was there something he knew that other people didn't? So the Talmud tells us that actually, it's fascinating, beyond my comprehension, basically, that God gets angry every day. There's a certain window of time. And Bilam knew the right moment to strike, but God turned his curses into blessings. God closed that window of anger. I guess it happens, lahavda, we can't compare, I guess just an anthropomorphic terminology to try to compare us to God. But there are moments, there are things that, there are times maybe when people get angry. I'm not exactly sure how to compare it. But the Talmud is telling us that there's a certain window of time that God gets angry, and Bilam knew what that moment was, and he thought he could sneak in his moment to curse us at that moment before that opportunity gets slammed shut. And of course, then God is merciful, but it's one of God's attributes is anger too. And only Bilam as a prophet knew exactly when that moment was. He knew when to strike against the Jewish people at that time that God would be angry with us. But what happened? God showed that extraordinary kindness at that time. God did not grow angry with us. Bilam tried in vain to find the opening where he could shove those malicious curses against us with God's consent. But no, it didn't work. He could have cursed till the Moabite cows came home, but nothing would have happened. So if we think about this for a moment, right? Here's the thing. The Torah said that Bilam did not actually curse us. God thwarted his attempts to do so. God transformed the curse into blessings. But as far as we could see, there was never a time, at least when we read it in the Torah, that Bilam actually cursed us, right? There were no curses. The Torah doesn't show any curses. So why does the Talmud say that it was only due to God's mercy that Bilam's curses had no effect on us? Meaning, the fact that God canceled that moment of anger is irrelevant if we consider the fact, according to the Talmud, that Bilam actually did try to curse us. He tried his curse to coincide with the moment of God's anger, and God transformed the curse into blessing. In other words, we're taught that God did two things to thwart Bilam's plan. God turned those curses into blessings, right? God slammed that window, that moment of anger, that time, God terminated it. So there wasn't that moment of anger. So the question is, why was it necessary for God to do both? If there was no window of anger, the curses wouldn't have helped. And if the curses were regardless turned into blessings, why did God need to close that moment of anger? If so to say, however you want to understand this, that God has a moment of anger, right? Because it seems that if Bilam would have cursed us at that moment of God's anger, then we would have been chopped liver, finished, chopped herring, whatever you want to call it. So here we're privy to a very interesting, a very powerful idea about thought. All those lovely musings, those thoughts swimming in our head. The danger here was not so much in what Bilam said, but in what he was thinking. The Gemara is telling us, yes, it's true. As the Torah tells us, Bilam he only said words of blessings. That's what the Torah tells us. But in his heart, he remained a twisted, bitter man. He was doing what he was hired to curse us. In his heart, as much as he blessed us with words, all these flowery, wonderful blessings, Ma'tovo Elecha Yaakov, he talks about how goodly are your tents, Jacob, Mishkan Esechi Yisrael, your dwelling is Israel. In his heart, he continued to harbor hate for us. So there, in his mind, in his heart, his thoughts were still running thick with curses for the Jewish people. And these thoughts had the potential to kill. Had God not remained merciful throughout the day, even if he didn't actually verbalize those curses, Bilam's thoughts had this enough toxic power to potentially wreak havoc, to destroy the Jewish people. Had God shown his almighty, his whatever you call that moment of anger, through even a tiny crack, Bilam's evil thoughts, they would have just destroyed us. They would have been effective because Bilam was privy to know when that moment of God's anger was. His thoughts could have changed the course of Jewish history. So there is this, I think, is an idea of enormous impact. Our thoughts are not the flimsy things that we think they are. They're not just stuff going on in our mind. Our thoughts are powerful. They have impact. They can do things. We shouldn't forget that. And that's why it was necessary to have both, the Talmud is telling us. Why? Because thoughts are powerful. And hopefully, this could tell us a little bit more about dreams. True dreams are, maybe you could say, it's not a prophecy, as the Talmud says in today's day and age, but because they are the product of our thoughts, because no matter how unconscious our dreams, our thoughts are, they hold a terrifying power. By the mere fact that they exist in our minds, they're able to become reality. And that's why we say the special prayer on holidays when we're saying when we hear the priestly blessing. Of all things we ask for is that the bad dreams shouldn't materialize and the good dreams should. Because we realize that our thoughts are not beyond the scope of what's right and wrong. Our thoughts are a very powerful place. Our thoughts and feelings are capable of accomplishing things. And we have to take responsibility for that. When we think that we're not just operating in some isolated place. Our thoughts are part of our very being, together with our hands and our feet and our pen and the words that we use. Our thoughts are very powerful. Think about the story of Yaakov. Remember the story of Yaakov and his dream? Remember our great-grandpa, Jacob Isaacson. When Yaakov was traveling and he was going to Haran, to his uncle in Mesopotamia, marries his daughters, his cousins, and he's forced to spend the night in the untamed wild. So what does he do to protect himself? He doesn't go into the Hilton. He doesn't go into the Sand and Sun. Where does he stay? He goes to sleep right there in the wild, in Kruger Park. Imagine that. So to protect himself from the wild animals around him, what does he do? Torah tells us he placed stones by Yasem Evemara. He places stones around his head. Now, true, it's a good thing, you want to protect yourself. But let me ask you, if you want to protect yourself, wouldn't you put these stones around your whole body? Why does it say Merashaisav just around his head? What about the rest of his body? Did it only his head need protection? If a wild tiger or beast of some sort would come and just devour his legs, no problem. How's he ever going to reach his destination? Why is he so worried just about his head? Huh? Says the Rebbe, a very powerful lesson that we all must take to heart. He said we have to ensure that the mind is protected, because when the mind is as it should be, then consequently the hands and the feet will also be as they should be. Very, very powerful thought that it's not just the rest of our body. The head has to be protected. Think about the danger of negative thinking is something that's very much discussed by psychiatrists. They talk about this negativity bias that, generally speaking, people are prone to thinking negativity, right? And therefore, we have to protect our head. We have to be vigilant over our thoughts. We have to be careful what we're thinking about. It's a very powerful thought. Negative thoughts have real effect. And likewise, I think we have to inculcate in ourselves a positivity bias to think in the right direction. We have to be very much aware of our thoughts because of their potential to cause harm if they're negative. And likewise, we have to embrace the possibility, the potential of all the good that our thoughts could achieve. So just to wrap it up, to think, we discussed a few weeks ago, the garments of our soul. What are the garments, the clothes of our soul? Chassidus tells us it's a machshava, dibur, meiser, our thought, speech, and action. And our thought seems to be the weakest of them, right? Speech and action, they're concrete, the words I say, right? My thought, what difference can my thought make to society? It's just in my head, right? My thoughts. Can I actually do something with the thoughts? Can I actually build, right? Can I make a difference? But I think if we take the Rebbe's words here and the message from our Parsha, we realize that thought is in fact a powerful player, a very powerful player to be reckoned with. And in some ways, it could be considered the mastermind that controls what we say, what we do. So we could think of thought as the hard product of our brain's activity. Right? On its own, what's a brain? It's useless. Okay, it might have tremendous depth and capacity, but we have to engage in thought for us to see the evidence, the product of our brain's purpose. And when we think, right? What is the idea of using our brain? It's the power of thought. And so thought is like a physical action because it marks a progression from the unrealized to the realized. In order for my ideas to come to fruition, you need to use the mind to think of it. That's the idea of the word Chabad. Chachma, Bina, Das. Wisdom, knowledge, understanding. Now, I'm not going to go to the depths of understanding that whole concept of what the philosophy of Chabad is, but the idea is wisdom is just a thought, and then Bina is where you process that thought, and Das is the implementation of that thought. Says the Frierdiker Rebbe, thoughts matter. Not only is it the first and closest vehicle of the soul, it has real bearing in actual life and has an impact on action. Thinking about someone else with positive, engaged thought is already an action. It must then progress into speech and real action. Das, the third word of the acronym Chabad, is about that implementation. And certainly, we could think of ways of times where you thought of an idea, or you thought positively about somebody else, and it created that good feeling, that goodwill between people. Perhaps there's just one more idea that I want to share with you that comes to mind before we go. It's a popular expression that the Rebbe oftentimes told us, which was Tracht gut, wird sein gut. If you think positively, then it will be positive. And it's important to have that positivity bias. It's important that we remind ourselves, especially during these troubling, difficult, challenging times that we're in right now. The very fact that we believe in our heart that we have the betachon, the faith, the emunah that we discussed, the belief the other day, that God is there for us and God cares for us and God will take care of us, that itself triggers God's kindness. So positive thinking all by itself is what affects positivity. And it's so important in our faith and our belief in God. So it's very important that we keep that idea in mind, the whole idea of teshuvah, right? The idea that a person, there's a Talmudic statement. If a person says that they're betrothed to someone else on condition that they are righteous, we believe that, because the idea of teshuvah, we believe every person can and has the opportunity to transcend their current state of being, that they can become a better human being. If a person claims to be a millionaire, doesn't work in a marriage to say, I marry you on condition that I'm a millionaire. We have to check, do you actually have the funds in your bank account? But if a person claims to be a tzaddik, the law is that we always consider that that's valid, that they're righteous. Why? Because every person has the ability. Every single person, even the most rotten individual out there, has the ability to transcend their current state of being. And it's not a false pretense, because in that one moment, when a person made the claim to be righteous, they could have done teshuvah. And so if a person could do teshuvah, a person could transform themselves to become a better human being at any single moment. And that's the idea of this insight. The moment that a person thought that they could be a tzaddik, guess what? Your thoughts are real. And therefore our sages tell us that even just for thinking positively like that, we believe that the person's able to actually do teshuvah in that moment to become a much better human being. And so, ladies and gents, I think the message is clear to all of us today, that if we just think more positively, create a more positive atmosphere around ourselves, and if we create a more positive atmosphere around ourselves, that will have a ripple effect. It's contagious. Everyone around us will hopefully be more positive. Instead of focusing on the negative that so much, what do they say in the media? If it bleeds, it leads. And that's why, what does the press, what are the headlines all the time? Constantly terrorism and earthquakes and problems. But instead we could focus on the good. And so I think that's the idea I wanted to share with you today. That action that we take in our minds is as potent as the ones we take with our hands. And it could be in both directions. Let's use it in the positive direction. It's a choice that we should make, as the story you've heard many times before, but I'll conclude with that one today, of the teacher who asked her class, "In my hand, I have a butterfly. Dear students, please tell me if you think it's alive or it's dead." Well, one student said, "It is dead." Teacher said, "Oh, sorry, I just messed up. Dead." Opened the hands and said, "Oh, there it is. It's alive. Let it fly out." And then another one said, "It's alive." Teacher said, "I can go like this and it's dead." But what the answer is, my friends? The answer is that it's in your hands. That's the answer to all of us. What do we do with our dreams, with our thoughts, with our feelings? The answer is it's in our hands. What we do with it is up to each and every one of us. So let's transform the negative thoughts and feelings that we sometimes have in life, and let's make them positive. And as always, I'm going to wish you all a wonderful day. God should bless you. Somebody trying to talk. I can't see. Why can't I see? I don't see everyone here. Rosalind, you want to say something? No, I don't see anybody trying to talk. Is my speaker muted? No. If it was muted, it's not muted anymore. Okay, and if anyone's trying to talk or share something, now's your moment, now's your chance. Please go ahead and do so. Otherwise, I wish you all a great day. Carpe diem, seize the moment, make the most out of it. Please God, we'll all be healthy and well, and see you all here again tomorrow. Sei gesund, everyone.
Rabbi.
Yes. Rosalind, who is it? Rosalind, your computer's muted. Now it's unmuted. Go ahead.
Your thought.
You're muted again.
Okay. Your thoughts are actualized.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed what you said. You were muted. Go ahead. No, something's wrong. Can't hear you. If you want, you can put your question into the chat box. While you're at it, I'm just going to quickly check our Facebook page to see if anybody's asking anything there or on YouTube. Yeah, go ahead, Rosalind. We keep losing you. You keep getting muted. I don't know what's going on. We keep losing you there. Rosalind? Hello? Ooh, keep losing you. Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to end it here because I got to go to the hospital to visit somebody, and the visiting hours are only between 11 and 12. So if you have a question, you could send it to me directly, or tomorrow right here. See you then, and we can chat.